Hey everyone, welcome back to Bitcoin Weekly, where we talk about all the news relating to Bitcoin, blockchain, and everything in between. Lots of stories today. Bitcoin currently is sitting at 43,000 US dollars as of the time of recording the show. We had a survey by Deutsche Bank where 2,000 people said Bitcoin's going to go below $20,000 by the end of the year. Then we have the opposite end of the scale where Anthony Scaramucci was like, no, Bitcoin's going to go to $170,000 after the halving, which is in April or so. We've got a Bitcoin miner going public in the US. We have inflation news and possible Fed rate cuts. So lots of stories. Let's get straight into it. So as you can see, Bitcoin currently is sitting at $43,519.70. So Bitcoin was down to $42,000, right, earlier this week or January 29th. And we had a bit of a pickup, maybe a significant pickup, right, where we topped off at about $43,130. And we've been moving sideways ever since then. A lot of people have said this is consolidation, but we'll have to see exactly what that means. And yeah, that's it for Bitcoin price action. We don't know what's going to happen, but it seems like things are looking positive. If you've seen a few stories throughout the week, people have said that Sell the News event was another story we talked about on last week's podcast. So that's totally done. We talk about ETFs and the amount of money that's come in there. So today's first story is really interesting. It says, according to Deutsche Bank research report, which includes a survey conducted from January 15th to January 19th. So that would have been about the time of the ETF, right? And you can see it on the chart right there. Expect Bitcoin to fall to less than $20,000, right? So this is really interesting. Deutsche Bank is I think as of the end of 2023, is the 21st highest bank or most popular bank in the world. I just looked it up before I recorded today's podcast. And it seems like 2,000 individuals seems like a lot of retail people. This makes me think that a lot of people are still hurting when it comes to cryptocurrency, in the sense of in the highs of 2022, 2021, they were like, oh my God, cryptocurrency is amazing. They put some money into it and they lost a lot of money in 2023. So they're very skeptical at the moment. So that's unfortunate, but it says a lot for the cryptocurrency industry that we do need to convince people that Bitcoin is here to stay, that it's becoming less volatile, that it is relatively safe to invest in, right? Nothing's 100% safe to invest in anymore. So some interesting data right here. It says the survey showed that over 1/3 of respondents believe Bitcoin will drop below $20,000 by January next year. Meanwhile, approximately 15% of survey participants expect BTC's price range to range between $40,000 and $75,000 by the end of the year. So really interesting. And I think this is definitely more retail people than institutional people. We'll have to see how that pans out. Let me know what you think down in the comments. What is your prediction for Bitcoin by the end of 2024? Today's second story is a really cool opinion piece about self-custodial Lightning wallets, particularly in rural areas. So this is really interesting. It's written by Anita Posh. I'd highly recommend you check out the article. It is very long, lots of data, lots of information. The idea behind this article is if you were living in the rural areas of, this is just Zimbabwe, but it could be rural areas of South Africa, which is like the middle of South Africa is just desert and pretty much empty, no people there. Could you get by with the Lightning wallet and paying for things with Bitcoin? And so this lady tested a whole bunch of Lightning wallets. And she came out with, at the end of the article, basically saying that Phoenix wallet is the wallet of choice overall, despite looking at a wide variety of wallets. At the start of the article, she mentioned there are lots of issues. People have to develop apps that use Lightning Network. You have to have nodes in the rural areas of Africa to process transactions. So it's a really interesting article. It's interesting because we talked about active Bitcoin holders. If you looked at a data visualization I posted on the 21Go social media account, it's just the active Bitcoin holders are roughly about 1 million people or so. So maybe that's Bitcoin and not the Lightning Network. Now that I think about it, so that might be another story. But I keep my Bitcoin on my hardware wallet. I don't plan on putting it onto a software or hot wallet anytime soon. If you are a Lightning Network user, please let me know. I'd be interested to see what Lightning Network wallet are you using. Again, we know Lightning Network is really famous for places like El Salvador, where you can go to Starbucks and McDonald's and pay for your meal with the Lightning Network. Today's next story is falling inflation, rising growth give US the world's best recovery. So this is really interesting. We know earlier this week, China's Evergrande is being liquidated. The judge in Hong Kong yesterday, when I woke up, was like, yep, we gave you guys enough chances to fix the situation and resolve the deals with your creditors. You haven't done so. So we're liquidating the entire company. They owe $300 billion. I guess it's 20 billion. I heard was the number tossed around for foreign debt. So too bad outside of China. But in China, that is a big problem. The Chinese economy is in a huge problem at the moment. There's also the general issue with Asian economies not having enough kids. I woke up this morning and I read a story about South Korea going from like 55 million to 22 million people in 7 years, which is really scary. They've done some things to solve that problem, but I don't think it's enough. I think it's very much like Seoul politicians like, this will fix the problem, but actually that's not really the problem. So that's really interesting. So this puts the US economy in a really good stead. The start of the article mentions that the European Union is also not super stable. Out of the biggest economies in the world, it looks like the US is going to be the one that comes out of post-COVID high inflation the best. So look at the stuff that the US is putting out from products from Apple, products from Boeing, products from other companies as well. Maybe Boeing's not the best example, but this is fantastic news, right? We know that the US is we're expecting the Fed to start cutting rates this year. I think something like 4 rate cuts on the low end to 7 rate cuts on the high end. Of course, that will boost the supply of money inside the system, which could be really good for crypto and Bitcoin as a whole. It's good, right? We have the Bitcoin ETFs. We have a potential for a spot Ethereum ETF come the mid point of the year. So things are looking good for digital assets. And let me know what you think. Do you think that inflation is going to improve elsewhere in the world? I know in South Africa, Taiwan, it's never been a huge thing, but it's been influential in small ways. If you're curious about that, send me a message, send me an email, korean@21.co. And let's move on to today's next story. Okay, today's next story is Bitcoin mining company Grid Infrastructure was set to begin trading in the US market Monday after going public in Canada earlier this month. So this is great news for Bitcoin because this is like another level on which somebody can get invested. Like, okay, I don't want to buy Bitcoin, but I think Bitcoin miners are a good strategy or a good portion of my portfolio. This also says that Bitcoin mining companies are becoming more publicly accepted. Maybe that's a strategy going forward in that, because in 2022, 2023, there were lots of people like, oh my God, these guys are damaging the environment, despite a lot of these companies using renewable energy. And they were like, okay, this is the last year we're going to allow Bitcoin mining in the state. I feel like that was New York, now that I'm thinking about it. That's fantastic, right? And we also talked about another story a few weeks ago that some companies are mining Bitcoin at a loss or will be mining Bitcoin at a loss, almost having. This was research from CoinShares, which shows, I think it was Hawk Insights. It's not Hawk Insights. There was a company, I will put this on the video, that basically said that I think even after the halving, they'll be paying like $74,000 to mine one Bitcoin. Which of course is a loss, right? So if Bitcoin sitting at $43,000, they'd be losing like almost $30,000 in terms of money. But again, a lot of these companies are playing the long game, right? They're mining Bitcoin, they're stashing it, they're selling some Bitcoin in order to pay electricity bills, in order to pay salaries, and then they're waiting for the future where today's last story, we'll talk about it, right? The $175,000 Bitcoin or the $500,000 Bitcoin or the $1 million Bitcoin, whoever you believe about Bitcoin's prices. That's what a lot of these companies are waiting for. All right, let's highlight as well. It says the company's facilities use roughly 67% carbon-free power. That's pretty impressive, right? And it expects that to increase to 90% by the end of 2024. Great news. Let me know, what do you think about Bitcoin mining and Bitcoin mining companies? Do you own any shares in them? I do not, but it's just something I've always meant to look into, but I just haven't had a chance to. And let's move on to today's last story. So today's last story, as I hinted to at the introduction, is Anthony Scaramucci predicts Bitcoin to hit at least $170,000 post-halving. Scaramucci also praised BlackRock CEO Larry Fink for doing his homework on Bitcoin and changing his mind on the asset. Very famous, Skybridge Capital, also famous. You'll see him on a bunch of finance shows. I want to end up today's show and on a positive note. $170,000 is fantastic. Whether that happens or not, again, this is just lots of people like to throw out outrageous numbers. And there are some data for these numbers in terms of the halving, reducing the supply of Bitcoin, including the buying pressure from ETFs, right? I believe I saw somewhere along the lines that the ETFs have picked up 100,000 Bitcoins or so since they launched, which is not that long ago. They're reduction in selling pressure. There's also the macroeconomic situation, which we've talked about on the last few Bitcoin weeklies, where there are delicate situations, supply crunch issues with the Red Sea and the Houthis attacking US supply ships, forcing supply ships to go around the Horn of Africa, which is a long freaking way, reducing supplies. I think of a story. I was trying to get a flu vaccine today or yesterday, and I called a bunch of places. They're like, no, we're out. Should have gotten one last year. And we're not expecting to get anyone until December of 2024. So I cannot get a flu vaccine, which sucks in a big way. But yes, so we saw two stories today, right? $20,000 at the end of 2024, $170,000. Which one do you believe? Let me know down in the comments. Let me know down in the YouTube video. And let me know what you think. So just a reminder as we end off today's show is that I will be off to South Africa in 2 weeks. So that doesn't mean the podcast is going to stop or the shows are going to stop. I'll be doing one video, one podcast, one interview a week. So this week, we're going to interview the CEO of io.net, which is doing decentralized AI and GPUs on Solana, I believe. And we'll have another interview possibly scheduled with a Bitcoin miner, with someone who's been really influential, also very highly educated as well, potentially for the first week of March. So going forward, we'll have one interview with one player in the cryptocurrency space per month, as opposed to doing one every week, which is really tiring and really busy. And let me know what you guys think. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. As always, it's always fun looking at the news and talking about these stories. And then we will talk to you same time next week.